In a day and age where for any instrument you can find countless video lessons such as mine on YouTube, do you still need a teacher, or can you do it all yourself? Well, that's what we're going to discuss in today's episode of Cello Chat. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Julia Morneweg, and on my channel we discuss absolutely everything to do with learning how to play the cello well. To those of you who are following me already, I want to say a huge thank you for liking my videos, for contributing, for asking questions, and of course especially to those of you who very generously have left me tips through my Ko-fi link below. Those really make a huge difference in enabling me to create more content. So without any further ado, let's talk about today's topic. Welcome back for another episode of Cello Chat. I'm sorry it's been, I think, more than a couple of weeks since I last uploaded a video, but I finally had a little break in my schedule for the first time since Christmas, so we took that opportunity to go on a little holiday. I'm all refreshed now, raring to go again with lots of ideas. And in fact, pretty much the first thing I did after coming back was last Sunday to host the June edition of Julia's Cello Cafe. For those of you who don't know, that is my monthly online cello hangout, where we always spend half the session having a little workshop on a particular topic, and then the second half is really completely open-ended, and what we do is it's a bit like a drop-in surgery where everyone can sort of ask me about their little cello related problems, and we usually, now it's become a sort of lovely little family, we just have a chat really about lots of different cello related things. And somehow this time the conversation was pretty much dominated by one central topic, and that was, would I benefit from having lessons? And I think by now I know that out of my now very nearly 3,500 followers, I think a very, very large proportion of you are simply trying to teach, more or less trying to teach yourselves to play the cello with the help of videos such as mine. So that obviously begs the question, can I teach myself to play the cello just using YouTube? And my answer to that would be, in short, to a degree. Yeah, you can certainly, if you just want to get the hang of it, or, it depends. Some of you might never have played the cello before. I think obviously many of you might have just started in lockdown, for instance, got yourself a cello, got onto YouTube and see, okay, let's see how this works. Let's see how far I get. Others, maybe learned to play at school, didn't do it for a long time, and now trying to get back into it. Or you might already have had lessons and you're just now sort of trying to get to a higher level. But one way or another, I think YouTube is an absolutely incredible resource, one which I really wish I had had when I started out. YouTube was really in its absolute infancy just as I was leaving college. So it's really something that was only starting off sort of as I was in, sort of already in my 20s. And I have found it a phenomenally helpful resource, still do to this day, because even I'm still an absolute junkie for sort of masterclass videos, and because you never stop learning. But for someone really just learning the nuts and bolts of playing the cello, I think there is so and so far that it can take you, but it also has its limitations naturally. And I think there is definitely still a very, very big role there for a teacher, and a very big argument for having lessons. And so those we're going to look at now in a little bit more detail. Perhaps the most important reasons why lessons are not only really valuable but also important is that ultimately we don't know what we don't know. And I give you a very practical example, and that is one that I see a lot of in my teaching practice. And that is when you try to teach yourself, the one thing you don't really know is the order in which skills have to be learned. What I see, for instance, quite a lot is people trying to teach themselves different positions, shifting, vibrato, at a point when, for instance, bow hold and right arm mechanics aren't really sufficiently developed yet to a point at which you can add any additional complexity. And of course, those are then the points where it's very, very easy really to hit the wall. And I think that's one of the main things where, especially at the beginning, we do need that guidance, and we do need someone to set out the roadmap. Another really important point to acknowledge is that self-monitoring is really, really difficult. Actually, only earlier today, I had a one-to-one session with one of my long-time followers on YouTube, someone who regularly comes to Cello Cafe, to my online workshop as well. And she signed up for a one-to-one session with me this week, and simply said to me, you know, I've watched all your videos. I think I'm doing it right, but I'm not really sure I can tell. So that's why I wanted you to have a look at. And that is a really, really, really important point, because ultimately it is very, very difficult for us, even if we think we are following something absolutely down to the T, to check whether we are really, really doing that. So I don't know, many of you have probably seen on social media, there are lots of these sort of memes around, yeah, where sort of the different pictures, and you know, it sort of goes what I think like I look like when I'm doing yoga, and you know, you sort of see the perfect downward dog pose, and what I actually look like when I'm doing downward dog. So and there is certainly a large element of truth to that. And I think you will never really be able to tell fully whether you are doing something right or not. And that's where that level of control sort of is really, really helpful. Even, I mean, obviously when you're recording yourself, the thing is that difference in perception between, you know, what you think you're playing and what you're actually playing, that never fully goes away. I mean, I still, to this present day, in practice, I record religiously, because you just keep finding things which you're not necessarily aware of while you're playing. And of course, the more experienced you become, you know, the smaller that discrepancy between perception and reality hopefully becomes. But to get to that point, that takes quite a long time. So so yeah, I think that's another really important point, is our ability really to self-police is something that takes a long time to develop. The third aspect, which I think is really important, is goal setting. I think when you're just working by yourself, it's really difficult to sort of maintain the motivation and even know, okay, what is my next goal? What is, you know, what should I be aiming for next? And more often than not, we might also underestimate quite a lot as to how far we can realistically go. Now, for me, that is something I have very much got personal experience of, not just in the field actually of playing the cello, but for instance in the gym. So apart from the fact that for me, obviously, because I'm hugely concerned about my earlier point that I'm doing everything absolutely technically correctly, because when you're lifting weights, if you're not doing it correctly, you can do quite a lot of damage, and that's obviously something I can ill afford. So so that's why for instance I work with a personal trainer, but who also does something for me which really I could never do for myself, and that is always push me that little bit beyond my comfort zone. Yeah? I'm now lifting weights which I would never have dreamt of being able to go anywhere near by myself. Yeah, just this little bit of, okay, right, how does that feel? Can you do it? Okay, well, you know, let's add a little bit more and see how you're getting on. And of course, the truth is, when you're doing it by yourself, you know, you probably wouldn't go there. It would just feel that little bit too difficult. And funny enough, I only had a conversation yesterday actually with one of my current online students with whom I've been working for about a year and a half, and he reminded me yesterday that actually one of the first things I apparently said to him when he first came to me, and he had already been playing, he wasn't a beginner, and apparently I said to him, I was like, okay, well, you know, why would you want to carry on with sort of let's call it suboptimal technique when you can learn to do it really well? And I think that is something I very firmly believe in. You know, well, if you can go that little bit further, if you can do it that little bit better, yeah, why wouldn't you want to do it that little bit better, right? And again, that's as a teacher where I see my role, to always show you stuff, to dangle the next carrot and go, actually, you know what, let's aim that little bit higher. No, you can be even more precise. Let's do all the niggly stuff, because what's on the other end is really cool. So that's really, I think that's very important. And I have to say, even now I kind of occasionally still have this sort of, I seek out this sort of next bit of motivation. So every once in a while, you know, I will still happily go and play to someone who really inspires me and who I know can probably just, you know, nudge this little bit more more out of me. So and that for me, you know, it's not about sort of you know, nagging someone to work harder. It's just always with my students, I try to encourage them to just, you know what, there's still more in you. Come on, let's go and find that together. And I think once you go down that route, that's where lessons are really, really fun, when suddenly you find yourself doing something which you didn't think you could do. So now you're of course going to ask me, well, how often should I be having lessons? And of course, that very much depends on your individual circumstances, because I'm acutely aware that one-to-one lessons, and especially high quality one-to-one lessons, aren't cheap. And that's in part actually why I created Julia's Cello Cafe, because I wanted to create this space where even if you can't perhaps afford regular one-on-one sessions, you can still access very, very high quality information and get the chance to ask questions and get feedback and get that input. But when it comes to having one-on-one lessons, if you can afford them, I would say, of course, having a weekly lesson is absolutely wonderful, because it allows this sort of very tight-knit monitoring and goal setting. But in reality, actually, out of my adult students, quite a lot of them, I would say, I maybe see once a fortnight. Some of them I see once a week, but many of them I see more sporadically. And I would ultimately say it's quality over quantity. I certainly know from my own experience as a student that I had some teachers with whom I had fewer lessons actually in total, but who gave me so much and such high quality information that with each sort of bundle of information I got, I was able to run so far before sort of going back for more. Whilst conversely, I also had others where perhaps I had 1 or 2 lessons a week, and I felt I was making next to no progress. So it really is all about, I would say, if I could give you one recommendation, is go for the highest quality you can afford. Rather treat yourself to that more sporadically, rather than just you know, looking for the most affordable you can get once a week. So that's certainly something I would say. And there is one other myth that I want to sort of address. Very, very often I have heard from people saying, but yeah, I'm not good enough yet, I'm not ready yet for a really good teacher. No. The most important time to have the best possible teacher is right at the start, because that's when good foundations need to be laid. Because I get a lot of people coming to me who have perhaps already had some lessons or tried to teach themselves for sometimes 2 or 3 years, or even longer than that. But there's so many, sometimes bad habits, so many things that weren't addressed, that weren't corrected, that were things that at that point, I usually have to say, look, in order to go forward, we're gonna have to go backward, and backwards often means right back to the very basics. And of course, that can be immensely, immensely frustrating. So instead, I would say always try to find the best you can right at the very outset when you start, because that will pay off enormously. Yeah. So I hope I have given you a little bit of helpful thoughts about why, even in the day and age of YouTube, lessons are still very, very important. And if you're interested, if you want to find out any more about my own teaching, whether that's one-to-one sessions or Julia's Cello Cafe, my monthly online cello hangout, just head over to my website, www.juliamorneweg.com. Link is below in the bio, and you can find out everything there. And of course, I'm always delighted to hear from you. So, folks, thank you very much for watching again, and watch out for more videos coming over the weekend. Cheerio.